Okay, so let's get going. I assume everyone can see the screen and we'll start off. Um, so this is session 5 of our course. We're about halfway through. Just want to draw your attention to the fact that on the Moodle, I've put up a new forum. Um, which you're invited to participate in. That it's not compulsory, just if you feel like it. But I thought it would be really nice to share any of the writing activities. Every session I end with a practical activity to take into the classroom, and I'm getting no feedback. I don't know whether you're using them or not using them, and I'd really like to know. So, if you feel like it, if you have time, if you have tried out the activities, I'd really like you to go into this forum and tell which activity you used, how it went, any reflections on it, and note that it's not an assignment. You won't get graded on it, and you won't get any credit for it in your final assessment. But it's just another nice thing to share, which I think we can all enjoy. So just to draw your attention to that. Um, this session, then, we're going to warm up with our own experiences of writing tasks. Now, I'm going to go straight into breakout rooms rather than in the middle of the session. Um, and then talk about textbook writing tasks, which is why I asked you to bring a textbook with you. Um, then we'll discuss the problem of maximizing opportunities to write. When right at the beginning, when I asked you to tell me what you saw as some of the major problems or issues with teaching to write, many of you wrote that there just isn't time. There's a problem of time with getting students to write, and they need a lot of writing practice. And how do we get them to write a lot within the constraints that we have of time, classroom time, and homework time? So I want to relate to that um, in this session, particularly talking about both classroom tasks and homework tasks. Um, and I asked you to talk about in the forum. Again, this wasn't a compulsory thing, but I asked people to suggest what kinds of homework tasks can be given that will not immediately be done by students using AI instead of actually doing the writing themselves. I'll then give the assignment, the routine assignment for this session, and activity. So that's the um, program for today. So to start off with discussion, breakout rooms. Okay, when we go into breakout rooms, we, the hosts, can see very clearly on our screen who is speaking and who has opened their camera and who has opened their microphone, who is participating, who isn't participating, and we're a bit concerned that a lot of you are not opening your microphones and cameras, and indeed are not participating, and only a minority are actually actively participating. And this is a problem on both sides, a problem of perhaps overactivity by the more articulate and confident members of the group, many of them native speakers, but for whatever reason, more confident, more able to participate, as opposed to others who are shyer, less confident, and a little bit apprehensive of making their voice heard. So this is an appeal, before we go into the actual activity, this is an appeal to both sides. Those of you who are shyer, please gather your courage, open up your microphones and your cameras and participate. And those of you who are more articulate and confident, please do your best to encourage other members of the group to participate in the discussion. Okay, and the discussion this time is something new. I'm going to ask you to take off your teacher's hat and put on your student's hat. And in the discussion in the breakout rooms, I would like you to share with each other memories of when you were a student, either at school or at university or college or wherever, memories of writing assignments, whether in class or as homework, which were particularly good, you successful, you remember them as good experiences, or particularly awful and you remember them as bad experiences. I'll start off by sharing one of my own. When I was at school, and we're talking 70 years ago now, I was at school in England, at a school in Oxford, and we were told to do a project and write it up. And I live in an area which is a forest area, and where traditionally there's a the craft of furniture making has been very long standing and developed into modern industry. And so I went to one of the furniture making companies in the area and interviewed and found out about traditions of making beechwood chairs, particularly tables also, but mostly chairs, and interviewed them, wrote it up. And I remember this as a really interesting and successful activity from my point of view. I really felt good about it. My writing and the pictures which I got from the company. I actually didn't get a very good grade on it. I got a fairly low grade because my research was based on this company. It came out rather like a promotion for the company. I got into trouble for being too commercial, but still, it was a very interesting and learning experience for me, and I did a lot of writing. So that's my memory. It happens to be a good one, but please feel free to share less good ones as well. Okay. Um, yes, here's the task on your screen. Um, and Gail, could you put people into breakout rooms, please?
So just a quick announcement from me working like crazy here on the administrative side of this course. Those of you that paid the 15 shekels and it was recognized and you weren't refunded, you paid the 15 shekels and everything's fine and you're not going to get broke because of it. And those of you that didn't or were refunded, you will not have to pay. And Michelle has just sent the attendance form again in the chat. Please go in, click and sign if you haven't yet. It's not necessary to re-sign the form. Some of you have been signing the forms 3 or 4 times. Once is enough, thanks.
Yeah, thank you for taking care of all the technical issues. Greatly appreciated.
Yeah. Gail and Michelle are really, really working hard at this. I just did the teaching, which is the easy
Gail,
part.
sorry, Penny.
Yeah.
Gail, can you repeat about the pay? I haven't paid attention
You
exactly
don't
for what
need to do anything. Everything is fine. If you're
Ah,
in the matzpen, you don't need to pay again. Okay, it's done, finished. Even if you got warnings, threats like Leah did and other people, ignore it. Nobody needs to pay anymore. Okay.
Okay. Can we have, we'll take about 10 minutes now just to hear some stories, okay, from the different groups. Gail and Michelle, can you look and see who's raising their hand and call on people? We won't have time to hear everybody, but just a sample I'd like to hear. So go ahead. Gail and Michelle, could you run this?
Baruch is first. Baruch, you raised your hand.
Yes, that's what you calculated. I
We can't hear you, and I think you're in a car,
that
so
activity
we can't hear Baruch. So who else? Penny, perhaps repeat the task.
Just to describe a writing experience either you had or you'd like to describe the experience of someone in your group which you'd like to share. We'll just spend a few minutes hearing some sample experiences of writing activities that were successful or unsuccessful for you as students.
Oh dear. Amy, thank you.
I
Hi.
can
So
share.
I'll
Oh,
share that in our group, common denominator was teachers either overly harsh reactions or tending to ignore. Loretta was thrown into the deep end of the pool and just told, write a poem, which was rather traumatizing since she didn't love creative writing as about a year 8 student, right? In England. And remembers till this day the unhappiness she felt, the stress at such a task. Everybody remembered having paper, well, not everybody. Two of us remembered having writing returned to us with way too many corrections. Green is grammar, and yellow is spelling, and orange is wrong word choice, and blue is a run-on sentence, and pink is the boring verb V. And that was just rather overwhelming. Everything is wrong. And I forget your name. Raise your hand, Christine. No, maybe someone, just the teacher wasn't kind enough to respond. She tended to return all works of writing with a similar grade of about 80 and no comments, no corrections, no suggestions for improvement, which was obviously demotivating, not to mention frustrating, rather borderline insulting.
Thanks, Amy. We're moving on to Baruch, who I can finally see if it's the same Baruch.
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. So I had a great experience with but only when I began to study my instruction certification. I met an English teacher that actually demanded high performance as far as I'm concerned. Every lesson he talked with us about different topics, some of them actual things that take place in the present. And every now and then he picked a word and taught us about the etymology and other appearance of this word and so on. And every lesson he asked us to, he gave us a piece of paper with 5 questions, and we had to write down the answers according to what he spoke with us the previous lesson. And he read every single word that we typed down, and that we wrote actually with a pencil and paper. And he gave us a, if you did the right work, he gave you nice grade and a comment and so on. So that was a very good experience. He was a really smart person, and I up until now I really admire this teacher.
You, Daniel. And then Karine, and that's it.
So I shared a personal experience from my high school where I really enjoyed writing about something that I truly enjoyed. And this is not often the case, at least nowadays in the high schools that I see. Most students are required to write about things that usually they don't care about much. I shared in my high school, it was like an open write about anything, I guess. I wrote about an evening with my favorite records, and it was also very highly commended. So I guess it's the combination of me writing about something that I really enjoyed, together with very positive feedback that I got from the teacher. And I shared with a group that I shared also with my class when I prepare 12th graders for the module G. And I ask AI, ChatGPT, or whatever for writing prompts ideas. I always ask it to think of boring subjects because I think from the standpoint of most of our students, the Module G prompts, writing prompts, are not very interesting. And it's a task by itself how to write about something that you never thought about before and you don't really care about so much. The brainstorming is much more difficult because you really need to squeeze the lemon hard in order to get new ideas. And the experience itself is not very enjoyable. So I tell them that I'm preparing them for what they will probably encounter in the module G. So it's not about having fun writing, it's about being able to write about something that isn't fun to write about. And it's very often the case, and also in literature, from my experience, limited connection to the pieces chosen and taught. And therefore, even when you're required to write about them,
Daniel, I
limited
couldn't agree with
opportunities
you
for
more.
pleasure.
I've seen this many, many times. The kids need a lot of time to think because they don't know what to write with a lot of the tasks that they get.
Yeah, right.
Let's move on to Corinne, and I'm sure Penny wants to continue soon. So
Okay, our group was basically split into three. Joe said she can't remember any assignment, only she remembers love learning English. Yara shared with us about a very unpleasant experience with one of her college teachers. He asked them to summarize a book into one paragraph, and every time she tried to do it, he came and he just wrote it off, and it made her feel very bad about the things every progress she made. He came and he just put her down. I shared my experience. It was a lovely experience with my professor in college because I can't remember any writing assignment from high school, but I do remember my professor in college, in law college, that the seminarian work we had to do, instead of just doing the whole thing at the end of the year, at the end of the semester, he just gave us gave us it in chunks. So every time we had to do one part of the writing in class or at home, in class and at home. The work was very structured and he gave us ideas and he gave us examples, and he was very passionate about how to teach us about this. We worked on textbooks. So I had a great experience. Yara had not so much, and Joe just can't remember.
Penny, thank you. Over to you.
Over to me? Yeah.
Yeah, unless
Okay.
you want to continue more, but nobody else
No,
is.
I just want to I'll just share my screen again. I've just been summarizing some of the ideas as you've been saying them, so I'll just go through that again. And now?
Yes, now we're fine.
Okay, so I just jotted down as you were speaking some of the successful writing experiences which you had, and you can just look through them as you heard. You also heard them. I won't waste your time by reading them aloud. I will look through these again and come back to them in later sessions. It's just interesting to share this. A lot of you stressed the response of the teacher as being a big part of whether you felt writing experience as successful or not, and also the way the teacher stimulated or did not stimulate. Unsuccessful writing assignments were these again. The teacher's reactions were really very, very important. And the stimulus given at the beginning of the assignment. So I will come back to these. Thank you very much for all your responses here. And really interesting and important discussion. I want to move on now to the next part of the session, which is to do with the textbook writing tasks. Um, and there's a difference between, I just want to start off by saying there's a difference between formal writing assignments that are clearly targeting Bagrut essays as the goal and writing assignments aimed at improving students' fluency and accuracy in writing. Okay, you see this distinction? And what I found when I was looking at the textbooks, and I did a survey of them, which I'll tell you about in a moment, was this distinction was very, very clear. And the point I want to make before carrying on is that B, writing assignments aimed at improving students' fluency and accuracy, will enable students to A, to write good Bagrut stuff, but only doing B, only doing A will not necessarily enable students to do B. In other words, and what we're finding in the textbooks is, in my view anyway, overly emphasis on the Bagrut assignments. So in my own survey, I took 6 or 7 junior high school and high school textbooks. I have to admit here that they're not very up to date. They're from about 8 or 9 years ago, and the ones which you have may be different. So with that reservation, I just want to say what I found in the ones that I looked at. First thing I found was that when I counted the pages and the space given to the different tasks, I found typically only about 5% of the space of the book was devoted to anything to do with writing. Much more reading. Well, it's in a sense it's obvious because reading obviously takes up more space than a a task on writing, but also grammar, vocabulary, and speaking and listening took up most of the space. Writing was a sort of poor cousin, not much space. Very often, the writing task is linked to language. In other words, let's talk about the present perfect now. In this writing assignment I'm going to give you, I want you to make sure that you're using the present perfect. A very limited range of genres. Remember, we talked in a previous section about the enormous number of genres of writing that exist and how few of them are in fact represented in the textbooks. A uniform level of formality. There's nothing which asks them to write informal English or very, very formal English on the other hand. It's sort of uniform level. Again, I assign this to the emphasis on or looking forward to the requirements of the Bagrut essay. Lack of clear purpose or audience. It just says in most cases, most of the assignments which I looked at were write such and such, not write in order to, okay? Or your purpose in writing is to something. Just write. And no sense of audience. You're writing this is the person you're addressing and you're trying to convince, even if it's an opinion essay, not who you're trying to convince or why. So lack of clear purpose, audience, and lack of fun. I think that just not very interesting. And this you brought up also in your discussion. Can't think of anything to say because normally the topic just isn't interesting. And it doesn't also use the strategies which we discussed in a previous session about how to motivate, how to excite, how to use language play in order to get students to enjoy or have fun or do some kind of doable challenge in their writing which will make them want to write. Yes, Corinne says we can always take ideas to the book and elevate them. Exactly. Yes, that's probably what we need to do, and we'll get on to that later. And there's very little on the rewriting process, which is really, really important in learning to write, learning to edit and rewrite your own writing in order to improve it and get to an acceptable result. Basically, what I found, and I'll hear your responses in a moment, basically, the books seem to be very much targeting Bagrut essays, even from early junior high school classes. And let me show you a screenshot of a eighth grade book. Eighth grade book, write an opinion essay. I mean, this is Bagrut, isn't it? And this comes straight out of an eighth grade essay about the kind of shopping, and in this case, the focus was vocabulary. So use the new words they have learned, and if you look at the guidelines, they are very much in line with the kinds of things that Bagrut teachers tell their students to do in their Bagrut essays. So this is something that rather disturbed me, that that the at least the books that I looked at seem to be very, very Bagrut oriented and not oriented towards we want our students to want to write well, to improve their writing. What can we do to help them improve their writing, which should be the main, yes. Okay, Miriam says, to be fair, things have changed quite a bit. Yes, Miriam, which is why I made the reservation at the beginning that I was looking at old books. So please update me and tell me in what ways things have changed. Moving on, I want to do something which we haven't yet done in this course. I want to use Padlet, and which Gail will in a moment put the link in the chat box. Recall or look at, because I asked you to have the textbooks by you, recall reading textbooks, reading it should be writing, sorry, my mistake there. Recall textbook writing task you used, or glance through the textbook, and what are your own criticisms, positive or negative? Open the Padlet and just write them into the Padlet. So instead of writing in the textbook, please write into the Padlet, and we'll publish the results later on the Moodle. But for the moment, just click on the plus sign in the bottom corner of the Padlet and add your notes, including anything you want to contradict what I've said and update me with regard to the more recent textbooks that you're working with. So I'll stop sharing and instead open up the Padlet if I can. Okay, I can now see on the screen Padlet with my own initial, just to remind you of what I said, but you don't necessarily have to relate to my criticisms. Please add your own, including positive things.
About 20 people are connected to the Padlet already.
Okay. It says plus 16, 17, 18, 19.
Is there any specific number of things we should write?
No.
Okay.
Up to you completely.
May I ask for clarification, please?
Go ahead.
You specifically mean to the book, not to the workbook, right?
Could be a workbook.
It could be one of them as well. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
But Sheva, the link is in the chat as well as in the WhatsApp group. And it's also in the Moodle, if I remember correctly.
After you write your entry in the post, you need to click on submit to make it appear so other people can read it. Gail, it looks like people are having problems getting into the Padlet, only 36, 39, 40 people managed to get there.
Yeah, or they're not with us. There are a lot of black screens here, so
There are
Once we
110
submit, it says
people in
awaiting approval. So you may need to approve before everybody can see what we've written.
what?
The Padlet is in an approval mode.
I can see what you posted.
I don't think anybody else can.
I can now see
I can see as well.
posts, yes.
We can see, I can
Even
see
if-
other people who
If you
post.
can't see, then refresh. The posts are coming in.
We're going to have to stop this now because we've got other things to get through, which are really important to me to get through. And please feel free to carry on. The Padlet will remain open, right, Gail? There's no problem going in later and adding stuff.
Absolutely. You can go in, you can
Great.
edit your own post if you logged in.
Okay.
You can comment
I
on other
will
people's
also, as
posts.
my homework, try to summarize everything you've written here, which is some really important stuff. Some of it, quite a lot of it actually ties in with what I wrote, but there's some stuff which updates what I wrote and adds other ideas which I hadn't thought of. So I'll try to take all this material and summarize it for session 6 next week and bring it back to you. But meanwhile, feel free to carry on contributing. Okay, I want to get back then to my own my own PowerPoint, and I'm going to try and I don't seem to be able to share it. Let me see. Why can't I share it? Let's try share. Can you see my screen, Gail?
Yes.
Okay. And the next full heading, maximizing opportunities to write. Can you see that?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So, as I say, looking at the Padlet and what you've written, that's my homework for next time to summarize that, and I'll bring it to you next time. But please continue to write. It's really important and interesting what you're writing there. Maximizing opportunities to write in class. The point is, the point I really want to emphasize is that students learn to write by writing. They need a lot of experience writing with positive teacher responses. The grading is not so important. Sometimes the grading can be demotivating. We saw examples of teachers who just grade with no comments, and this really doesn't help very much and can be very discouraging. I want to talk about practical techniques for maximizing opportunities to write, starting with class. And my suggestion is basically that every lesson we give them 5 to 10 minutes, no more, because we just don't have the time. There are other things we need to get through in lessons. Between 5 and 10 minutes of writing activities when the students are sitting in class and writing on paper, pencil, pen, using a brief, fun, or easy challenge writing task where the stress is on write as much as you can, because we want to get them lots of writing, and meaningfulness, not worrying at this point about correctness. There will be other opportunities for us to worry about spelling, grammar, punctuation, and so on. The point of these activities is to get them to write as much as possible in order to convey meanings. In other words, the stress is on the communication and the content rather than the form. The in class, these short activities do not have a grade, though they may get feedback from the teacher depending on how much time you have and how much opportunities. Sentences, not lists of words, though I'm going to give an example of where there are some for lower level classes where lists of words could be useful, but mostly sentences, not necessarily full paragraphs. The writing has to be clear. I have to be able to read it, so the handwriting has to be clear and may or may not be read and given feedback by the teacher, depending on how much time the teacher has, how big the class is, what other priorities the teacher feels she has in the particular, or he has in the particular class, and so on. Practical aspects, the writing is done on one of the following: either a notebook for short classroom assignment, which is kept in school because it's not homework, it's just classwork. So it could be a pile of notebooks kept in the classroom. It's an idea which Michelle gave me, or a sheet of paper given to each student at the beginning of the writing task to be taken in or kept in a portfolio, and I'll be talking about portfolios in a separate section. Or for some of you, possibly part of their regular English notebooks. Timing, one of my colleagues does this as a regular routine at the beginning of the lesson. While the students are coming in and sort of getting organized, there's already a writing task written on the board. As they come in, they know that they take their classroom notebooks or they take a piece of paper and they do whatever is written on the board until everybody arrives and the lesson proper starts. So that's one possibility that a colleague of mine uses. Another possibility is after you're actually beginning the formal class as the first item, or as at a transition point between other lesson components, not usually at the end of the lesson. At the end of the lesson, you want to do something which is sort of rounding off and ending the lesson. So here are some possibilities. Okay, given that 5-minute writing activity in a class, every lesson. One possibility mainly for lower level classes, but also a quicker one is just brainstorm. So write as many something as you can think of in English. Easiest, things like these, okay? Very quick and easy for a low level class. Easy, not quite so easy as the previous one, but a little bit more challenging, a bit more thoughtful. I won't ask you to do it, we haven't got time, but you can see the kind of thing. Okay, I'll leave you just a minute or two to give you time.
Could you go back to the low level one, please? Just 1 minute, I'll take a photo.
These, I mean, you can think up on your own easily enough. They're fairly obvious ones. These are slightly less simple, but challenging, fun, perhaps slightly out of the box. More challenging. And I'm sure that you could add more ideas yourselves in the your imaginations work as well as mine do. Okay.
Penny,
Yes.
Penny, there's a question here in the chat. Don't
Yeah.
you think that the emphasis on fluency over accuracy in the beginning makes accuracy more difficult to obtain in later grades?
I think they're going on in parallel, is the answer. For the sake of practicing writing, you're having the emphasis on fluency. In other parts of your lesson, you're doing grammar exercises, you're doing vocabulary exercises, you're doing spelling exercises, you're emphasizing accuracy in different ways. So it's not that it's first and second, it's just that in the amount of writing you give, I think there should be an emphasis on accuracy. You'll be teaching accuracy in different parts of the lessons, and there will be exercises as well. You might take in other lessons where you're actually taking time in the lesson, either or taking time for homework to do exercises where the accuracy is as important or maybe even more important. The second activity after brainstorming is something I call Just Right. And it's a combination of an activity I used to do called 5-minute writing storms and Michelle called extensive writing, right, Michelle? Rather like parallel to extensive reading, where you give the students a 5 minutes to write, but instead of single words or a list of items, you ask them actually to write sort of mini essays. And they have a permanent Just Write notebook for each student kept in the classroom. As they come into the class and they take their notebook and, or not even as they start, if you want, you can do this in the middle of the lesson, but a possibility is to do it right at the beginning. They start writing on a new page according to the topic on the board. And you need to remind them they should write as much as they can, not to worry about mistakes. They have to write in English and in sentences. What they write has to be readable and understandable to an English speaker, and it won't be graded. It may be, however, given feedback on, depending on whether the teacher has time or not. And as you said in your comments earlier, I think that the feedback that the teacher gives without the grade, the feedback, the response, I've read this and this was interesting and this is what I feel about it, or this is where I think you could have made it clearer, or this I didn't understand, can you explain? This kind of personal response is much more important than a numbered grade. Sample topics, these are just off the top of my head and also using some ideas which Michelle gave me. These are the kinds of things which they might be asked to write about. And a lot of them have you in them, okay? They are tend to be topics which are personal and therefore easier to write about, more personalized and slightly challenging. Remember that this presentation will be available on the Moodle later, so even if you can't remember everything that I've written here, it doesn't matter, you can always go back to it. When Michelle described this, how she actually did this in class, she also shared with me some of the student reflections which they gave her after a term or year of doing this kind of writing in their extensive writing notebooks. And here are some of the responses she got from them. Okay, there are mistakes, but it's the idea of getting across. There are also a lot of correct stuff.
Just gonna add that the kids writing this were at the end of 9th grade.
And how big was the class, Michelle?
Close to 40.
40.
Looks like it was high level, like Hagbatsa Aleph.
Michelle, unmute yourself and answer, could you?
They were Hakbatza Aleph, but I started with them at the beginning of Kita Zayin, because they were one class. They were a cyber class, so they were cooperative. But I did this in all levels. I had them for 3 years, the whole 3 years of junior high, And at the beginning of junior high, I would say about half the kids wouldn't have been in Aleph, and maybe even there were like 10 that wouldn't have been in Bet even if they had been sorted out. And one of these reflections that you're reading is by a kid who could barely read when she started. So,
Impressive.
yeah.
Okay, next technique I'm going to talk about is something called pass it on. Give each student a sheet of paper. In this case, it's not notebooks. Each student gets a sheet of paper. Tell them to write at the top, "Once upon a time there was." Sarah says, without feedback at all, if I were a pupil, I wouldn't write anything. It turns out they do. Try it. Certainly, Michelle or the teacher will give as much feedback as they can. I think the feedback is important. They need to know that sometimes they won't get it because the teacher's a human being and there's just so much time you have when you have a class of 40 and a lot of stuff to read. So back to my screen. Each student gets a sheet of paper. They write, "Once upon a time there was," and they finish the sentence any way they like. When they finish the sentence, they raise the sheet above their heads, look around, and exchange it with anyone else who's finished and raised it, and then write a new sentence. And the process continues with students writing all the time, and there comes out stories at the end, and you give feedback, display results, read out according to whatever you choose to do. The reason why I do it with not just past your neighbor, but raise it above your head, is that if you do it just past your neighbor, you get bottlenecks. And anybody who's done it will know the sort of pile up by there's someone who's writing more slowly while someone who's writing quickly is hanging about waiting for something to read. If you do it the way I've described it on the screen, everybody is writing all the time because you exchange as soon as you've finished with someone else who has also also do it. Okay, some interesting notes in the chat box. Yeah, Sarah at least goes round and simply put a check mark. Just that little bit of appreciation, I think, means a lot to students. Just putting a check mark or just writing good or whatever.
I'll tell you, Penny, no offense, I generally don't speak, but I appreciate your input, but I can't help but disagree because I want it to be sincere. And to write good with so many, if there are going to be many mistakes, that's deceiving.
Okay, so not good. So just a check mark. So write good if it's good and just a check mark that, yes, you've done it. Okay?
I have an idea, though. Why not use pictures here? You know what I did? For an activity for writing, I put up a lot of pictures from the New York Times prompts. They had to choose one, and they had to write in pairs or in 3 or 4. I know there were groups. And they had to write why they chose, what's in it, why they chose it, and then they presented it to the class. And it was really very nice. You understand? I walked around, but they all wanted to do it. Even the kids who said, no, 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 they all did it.
Sarah, can you write that into the WhatsApp, please? Share it with everyone, because I haven't got time now to write it out. But it's a really nice idea, and I'd like people to be able to come back to it. Okay?
But afterwards and put it in, because I'd like to hear what you have to say, all right? I'll put it in here where you said,
put
okay?
Put it in, and I'll respond, okay.
Thank you.
A variation to the pass it on idea is instead of writing a story, write a poem. As it's described on the screen, I won't bother to read it out to you. But you get the result of a poem which is written by everyone. The advantage of these pass it on is that on the one hand, you don't get a composition from each student that you can get and give feedback to that student because it's got a contribution from a lot of different contributors. But it does mean that every student is writing all the time during the activity, and that you do get some rather nice results which you can then display, give feedback on, read out, share in different ways, and it's a nice technique to play with. Another variation on the pass it on, which is easier, is each student chooses a student from the textbook right at the top of the page. The next student copies it out, changing some of it, either one word or 2 words or 3 words, but it must still make sense, passes it on, and so on and so on and so on, until you get a whole chain of sentences which have changed. Variation 3, easier still. First student writes a single word at the top of the page, and each student adds a word until it develops into a sentence or maybe even a paragraph, each student adding a word. But they can add, as you see halfway down the screen, they can add 2 words, or you can even say you can add 3 words if you like. And at any point where the student gets it, they can add punctuation, capital letters, so that it makes sense. And if the sentence gets too long, they can put a period, full stop, and start a new sentence or even a new paragraph. And again, to display, to share. But the point is that they are all writing during the minutes when the activity is going on. Okay, please write into the WhatsApp or into the chat box. Maria says, I use a star-shaped hole puncher when I don't want to give grades. Most students love getting star. That's a nice idea. Yeah. Other possibilities, of course, stickers, which are fairly cheap and can be stuck onto little star or smiley sticker. Yeah, Revital says. Yeah. Okay. And we're on to homework tasks, which is what I asked you to talk about in the forum. At home, obviously, there's more time to write than there is in class. We're less limited in time. And for many, it's actually nicer if they're writing in their own space rather than in the classroom. But it's also easier to get someone else to do it for them or to use AI. And from your correspondence, I know that a lot of you are really, really worried about the fact, and justifiably so, that students are using AI to do their homework writing rather than doing it themselves. Couple of general comments from the forum. Nahama wrote, "Is it necessary to give homework at all?" And she quoted Finland, where they've dislegal. What's the word I'm looking for? Illegalized digital devices, and they do everything by hand and give very little homework. And there are some schools, she says, in her school, right, Nahama, I don't know if you're here, I hope you're here, that in your school very little homework is given at all. And in fact, there is some research which shows that homework does not make that much of a contribution to learning, particularly in lower grades. In higher grades, it makes more. And it's an ongoing debate in the research literature about the value of, and David says as well, agrees with this. I don't give homework in my eyes, it's a waste of time. See what they're doing at home. Yeah. Okay. So homework, I think this is, I'm glad David has also contributed to this, and Hammer's comment is one which is worth thinking about. How important is homework and how much does it contribute to their learning? And Moshe says as well, do all writing in class because there's no way I can control what goes on at home. Michelle suggests that homework must be handwritten, which helps to prevent AI. It doesn't completely make it impossible. But if they do copy from an AI text, then first it's just a lot of work to copy if I had. And secondly, even if they copy, they're learning something from the copying. So maybe we've won out there as well. So there's just general comments about homework. And then other people took up the challenge of what can I ask them to do at home, which they are unlikely to be able to do using using AI. Yes, Joe says I can't give homework to my students. Why, Joe? Because the school doesn't allow it, or for what reason? Just jot down the reason in a moment. Homework can be to learn vocabulary words, which you then check. Yes. Handwritten, yes, without a phone nearby. Yes, a lot of schools simply confiscate phones at the beginning of the day and give them back in the evening, in the afternoon. So they haven't got the phones by them anyway. But some ideas for home writing. Some of these are my own. Some of them came from the forum. But the one of the main categories which people pointed out was that if you ask them for personal information, there's no way AI can do it for them, or very, very difficult for AI to do it for them. So things like sentences using new words, but they have to be about me, or what I did yesterday, or my own personal history, or adapting a poem or short text we studied in class, so it applies to you, where these come from a contribution by a particular member of the group I've written in the name. Personal experience, for example, a challenge I faced, or a personal encounter, or interview a family member. What helps when I'm bored? This came from a previous session of ours. My favorite, whatever, could be sport, out of activity, celebrity, school subject, whatever. I think I'm going a bit fast, so I'm going to slow down a moment, just give you a moment to look at those. Okay, more ideas for personal writing. Some things I don't know, some things I've never done, some things I would like to do, some things I would like to learn, my own take, which AI obviously can't do anything, can't do instead of you. Self-assessment is a really nice one. Writing about how I feel I'm doing in English. That's towards the end of the term. A personal problem might be a bit too personal, but possible. Describe my bedroom, the clothes I'm wearing, view of my window, personal information about yourself or your history. For instance, Michelle suggests, how did your parents choose your name? You can probably think of other very personal things which they might be willing to share in writing. Writing based on a photograph. Someone pointed out that AI has a really hard time doing writing on graphics, on pictures. So a photo of a real event, place, or person familiar, plus commentary, a story, how this happened, anything I want to say about the photo, pictures of different occupations and qualities, which I choose for myself, describe what's going on in any photo which you took, which is yours, or describe a member of your family, and responses to other students in a using perhaps even WhatsApp or some other way of communication. Yeah. Hedva says they write in Hebrew and ask chat to translate as if it was, yes, that's another problem, using translation. We'll need to talk about that in another session. I'm not managing to get through it. Wait a minute. Someone has a comment. You have a question regarding telling students to copy sentences for text. I do this for my students. When the student, why do we have to do this? I don't always have a good enough answer. I'll think about that and get back to you. Okay, write it. Please write this question into the WhatsApp, and I'll get back to you when I've had time to think about that more. Amy, tasks which help teach them to write good prompts for AI. Amy, I'll be talking about use of AI in a different session. At the moment, I'm talking about how to avoid using AI and do personal writing. Other ideas for home, which difficult for AI to do instead of you, are recall as much as you can of the lesson and write, or reflect on a particular activity or discussion in the lesson, or describe something that helped you learn in the lesson. In other words, all these things that relate to a particular lesson, no way AI could have been in the lesson to do it. Or recall as much as you can of what people said. It's a nice way of incidentally practicing indirect speech. Or revise an essay in the light of, this is a new one for me, essay in the light of peer feedback, where you have to also mention what the peer feedback was and how you related to it and how you were able to improve your essay as a result. And the third area of ideas for home writing without AI relate to the student's environment. Firstly, what's called the linguistic landscape, writing and speaking which happens in the landscape. So find as many English texts as you can on signs or posters near where you live and write them out. So it could be advertisements or directions or all sorts of things. Another idea from Doa, spend 30 minutes in a public place, notice what goes on and describe and bring to class, or describe clothes or shoes or hairstyles you saw on people in any busy place like a shopping mall or something near your home. Okay, we're getting near the end of our session. The classroom activity, which I'm going to ask you to do, is any of the ideas given earlier in this presentation. This presentation has been particularly rich in ideas of things to do for writing. I don't think I've ever done so far in this course a session which had so many practical activities in it. And so I'm not giving a separate classroom activity this time. I'm asking you to give to try out any of the ideas given earlier in this presentation for 5-minute just writing activities or brainstorms or pass it on or any of the homework ideas which were suggested. Michelle says is finished doing the attendance form, the attendance sheet. Do I need to say anything about this, Michelle?
No, the link's in the chat. Please sign the attendance form once.
Just like to relate to a comment by Baruch, who says, get to know the parents. Your parents are important allies here. Ask them to intervene and make sure that their child doesn't cheat. In most cases in the 7th and even in the 8th grade, 2 words. Yes, thanks very much for that very important note. Using the parents as allies. To see, I'm just checking through the chat to see if there's anything else which I have missed here. Copying sentences to the board, I said I need to relate to separately, and writing in Hebrew and asking chat to translate. Yeah,
Excuse me,
we'll
about parents.
we'll
So I
talk
just
about
wanted
translation later. Sorry?
I just want to say
Yes,
about
Sam?
parents, that's a problem because you have to remember, I'm not saying it's complete, it's a nice idea, but also there's things like divorced parents. So you can't just go to one without going to the
No,
other.
yeah,
You have to
right,
be
right.
sensitive. And
Um,
you also remember, it's also, I once took a course in this about discipline problems. And one of the things with this parents, we have to also try and get them on our side because many times I've experienced where they're angry and everything. And I worked on myself to try and get them on our side. I'm just saying here, it has to be done, I'm saying, very thought out before, not just something, you know what I mean, on the spot, to think
yeah,
about it before how we should present it. That's
yeah,
all.
yes. David says nothing is AI proof unless this is done in front of without a phone, which is true. but we can make it less likely for them to use AI. And the ideas given here, I think, make it less likely. It's true they can use translation, but that means that they have to write the original text they have to type it or write it by hand and then get AI to print it, which there are programs which do this, but it's quite a procedure. And for many of the students, it's actually less work to do the writing straight into English than to go through a whole procedure of writing it out, printing it out, getting AI to translate it, then writing out again in handwriting, because remember we said that homework has to be submitted in handwriting, and it's probably easier for them in most cases simply to write it out by themselves. So the translation idea, yes, but it may not be worth their while to take the trouble to do it. Assignment for this time. I'm asking you for the assignment, and this time I'm doing it on the forum so that people can look at other people's submissions. Select a writing task from an approved English textbook you're familiar with. And in the light of the comments which we've seen in the Padlet, and the Padlet will also be available to you on the Moodle, identify positive and negative aspects of it as a tool for enhancing student writing in general. Suggest how you might use, adapt, or redesign it for your own classes. So that's the assignment, and I'm asking you to do it, as I say, in a forum format so that you will be able to see what each other has written and learn from each other, which we're doing throughout this course. And I'm also learning a lot. So I think that's one of the nice things about this course in general. Just to check the chat box again. Anything I've missed?
Penny, I had asked earlier about at what age writing errors become fossilized.
It's not a question of age. It's and there's no such thing as fossilized or not fossilized. They become more entrenched or less entrenched. I've already said that I think what we need to do is, as far as we possibly can, prevent them rather than correcting them, but we will eventually, of course, need to correct them. And I've no definite numerical answer to that, Amy. It's just we have to try to prevent the mistakes from becoming entrenched as far as we can. Funny story from Miriam. Yeah, sad story. Yes. Can you send the file? Which file, Hanan, are you talking about? Yeah, the idea of using emojis instead of grades is a nice one here, given in the chat box. And so this assignment, the assignment, Sarah, is when you go into the forum, you find a new discussion topic. You click on the button which says new discussion, new topic, and then you write in your own contribution as you did in the other assignment formats. But in the forum, it's just a little bit easier and also easier for us to read when we are looking at them. Okay, so as usual, between 100 and 200 words, although you can do more, of course. And thank you very much for your participation. And I'll see you next week and be looking at the WhatsApp to see any ideas you have to add to the ideas that came up in this session. And thank you all very much for your contributions.
Thank you.
Penny.
Thank you, Penny. Good night.
Thank you,
Thank
Penny.
you.
Thank
See
you.
you.
So much.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Good
Wishing
night.
everyone
Thank you.
quiet, peaceful days.
Good night.